Good afternoon and welcome to Hard Talk with Marsha Walker. Today it is Hard Talk with Marsha Walker and Chris Hussein. He is my guest co-host. He and Issa were so good a few weeks ago that I told him, he has to join me. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Marsha. How are you this afternoon?
I'm cold actually. I normally put on
Really?
socks. I normally put on socks and I forgot to put on socks. And you would think that I could just turn the AC off or something. But
Turn on the AC.
yeah,
Turn it
yeah.
off.
We have we have a guest, MP Paray. Are you ready for our first guest, Chris?
No, I am not. Because the reason why I think I think this member of parliament, I mean, if we are looking, like we of course there's an introduction that we have to do for him. And maybe we could lead him into the conversation immediately. I think he excited the political landscape. Do you think he excited the political
I
landscape?
do think so. And I think some of the questions that I'm going to ask him today, I'm so sorry that I did not plan this with you, Chris, but I think this is front page worthy. So for our guests, I didn't, maybe we should take a moment to share the link. Maybe that's what we should do. Take a moment to share the link.
The reason I say that
But
is
I'm seeing him on his
because
screen now, so I'm just saying, I think he's here. So
yes,
prepared or not, he's about to come on.
so we want to
All right, do
welcome,
your introduction, Chris. Do your introduction.
yeah, we want to welcome to Power 102 prime time as it is.
Yes, drive
The,
time. People are
the
listening and they're in traffic because we prepare and plan so well under this PNM government.
Lord,
So they are in traffic, Chris. So make their traffic exciting. Help them forget that they are in traffic, Chris. I'm giving you
yes.
the honors to introduce MP.
So we're not just welcoming someone who's a self-made entrepreneur, someone who is held um, several positions outside of a public office. Of course, this is his second term as a member of parliament for Mayaro, a marginal constituency, by the way. And some persons don't know that, by the way. For some of you are listening on, Mayaro is a marginal constituency. He also would have served on several joint select committees and contributed to over 40 motions and bills in the parliament. Recently, this member, I want to say member Parry, I feel as though we had a joint select committee a little bit, but he also mounted a platform and challenged the status quo in his political party, that is the United National Congress. And he opted to submit a campaign to the members of the United National Congress built on wanting the UNC to be stronger, identifying that the UNC is strong, but it has the potential to be stronger. And of course, things did not work out, I assume, the way he planned. However, he still was able to win, especially in his constituency, which I think is very, very loud.
Very important. It
Very
is.
important.
But Chris, you're
Street.
talking too much, so I'm going to cut you off because I want to hear from MP Parry. Because you're going to have time to talk after, you and I, alone, after MP Parry leaves. And I think, MP Parry, you have a short time with us. Well, when I say short, I can have you for 2 hours. Your video, I clipped your video, and thus far, it is doing the best out of all of my guests so far. So, we want him.
Okay.
And I feel he's going to double it again today. He's fast becoming a popular face in politics.
I think he became.
Okay, he
Yeah.
became. So he is now.
Is
Yes,
now.
he
Is
is
now.
now. All right. So MP Parry, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for fitting us in because I know that you have another engagement later on. So
Yes.
I do appreciate it.
Are you hearing me?
We are
Yes.
hearing you.
Okay, good. All right, good. And thank you for having me.
Okay. All right.
So
Let me find. So MP Parry would have written, you wrote a letter to the editor, and I challenged you on it, which I like the fact that you are available, one, and you are challengeable. If that's a word, Chris, is that a word? Somebody gonna clip it and say I didn't go to school. But you are
well, I don't know. Sorry, my
challengeable
job. Include me in the
in
video.
quotation marks. So you are not, it means for those who want to if it's not a word, it means that he doesn't have a problem with not having yes people around him. So if I see he writes something and I could challenge him on it, he is open to me challenging him and engaging in debate, engaging me, showing me a different side of things. And I like that about you. So you wrote, let me see. I don't know if I should, I'm going to try to read the whole thing very quickly. Very, 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 very quickly. If I could find it. Oh my goodness. Chris, I sent it to you too.
You did.
Start reading it now, if you could find it. Okay, political loyalty versus standing on principle in the age of social media. Though I'd like to say it's in the age of all the time, just stand on integrity. Dear editor, in today's political landscape, a fine line exists between political loyalty and standing on principle. This tension has become even more pronounced with the rise of social media and the advent of instant fact-checking, placing political figures under constant public scrutiny. In this era of heightened transparency, blind political loyalty without the necessary grounding in principle can swiftly lead to the erosion of personal credibility and the public's trust. Political loyalty is often presented as a virtue, particularly within party structures that rely on cohesion to push through policies and sustain electoral strength. At its best, loyalty signifies shared values and collective efforts toward the common good. However, the darker side of this loyalty emerges when it demands silence or complicity in the face of unethical behavior, questionable decisions, or actions that conflict with the well-being of the public. When political loyalty overrides personal convictions, it quickly leads to a loss of integrity, both in the eyes of the electorate and within the politician's own sense of self. In this age of social media, where every statement, vote, and decision can be scrutinized, shared, and dissected within minutes, the consequences of sacrificing principles for party politics are severe. Voters are better informed and increasingly expect their representatives to be accountable and transparent. When a politician's actions are perceived as abandoning moral standing in favor of party loyalty, the public is quick to react, and the damage to personal credibility can be long-lasting. This dynamic brings to light an important question for those in public life. Is it simply a choice between staying in the political arena or leaving if one cannot reconcile loyalty with principles? I believe this is a more nuanced issue. Remaining in the political sphere does not always necessitate abandoning one's principles. Some of the most influential political leaders have been those who, despite party pressures, have stood firm on the matters of principle, challenging policies or practices they deemed harmful or unjust. Political life, by its very nature, involves compromise. However, that compromise should be on methods, not values. A principled politician can navigate the complexities of public life by pushing back against unethical practices, advocating for better policies, and engaging in respectful dissent. Loyalty to a party should never come at the expense of one's loyalty to ethical principles or public trust. That said, there are moments when the conflict between loyalty and principle becomes irreconcilable, when the values of the party or its actions conflict so deeply with a politician's personal convictions that they cannot in good conscience continue. Stepping away from public life might be the only way to preserve one's integrity. In these cases, leaving the party or public office is not an admission of defeat. Rather, it is a powerful statement that underscores a deep commitment to values and moral responsibility. In the long term, loyalty should not be equated with blind obedience. Instead, it should mean a steadfast commitment to serving the public in line with both ethical principles and the common good. The most enduring public figures are often those who prioritize integrity over short-term political gain. In today's hyper-connected world, where transparency reigns supreme, such figures will find that standing on principle is not only the right choice, but also the one that secures lasting trust and respect. As the public grows more informed and critical, politicians must remember that loyalty to their constituents and their own ethical compass will ultimately be more valuable than loyalty to any political party. The price of sacrificing personal principles for political allegiance can be too high, both for the individual and for the society they serve. Sincerely, Member of Parliament for Mayaro, Rushton Parry. I got goosebumps a second time reading it, Chris. Obviously, I would have raised issues and I would have stepped away. Well, I guess I didn't step away. I was fired, unconstitutionally removed. But I did step away as the constituency coordinator for Diego Martin West, standing on principle. So when I read this, obviously there was a personal. It
resonated with you personally.
Yes, personally. Yes, thank you. Brain fart there. So MP Paray, you want to talk about it?
Sure. I mean, look, at the end of the day, in most careers that you're in, you're a civilian twice, but you're a professional once. When I'm finished, when the politics is finished with me, because you are never done with the politics will finish with you. You go back into the community that you came from. And I've always maintained that I came into the politics in 2015 with a good family brand in Mayaro here, one that is anchored on respect and decency and hard work and for love of community and so on. And for whether this is my final year or I have 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead in the politics, I am absolutely sure the decisions that I make or I have made, I will return to my community with a very good brand, with my head held up very high in whatever format that I return to the community. Coming to the article itself, a lot of queries and issues would have raised coming out of the internal campaign, where the issues around loyalty to leader and loyalty to party came up. And I was wondering if we are following a constitution, because the election was constitutionally mandated. As members of the UNC, we are all shareholders of a party. I don't think any one person has a deed for the United National Congress. So we embarked on a constitutionally due election where every member has an option to put their hat into the ring and to convince the base of the party that, look, you have a better plan or you have a better idea. Now, I'm not talking about the results here because there are a number of issues raised and, I don't want to go down there because we'll run into 2 hours of conversation. But the mere fact that issues of loyalty comes up when you try to execute a constitutionally due action item, well, then it means clearly there is a dysfunction in the system. Because if you want a leader for life, let's change the constitution and make the leader emperor. And when the emperor dies, then the next man fight and kill everybody else, and who remains standing move forward. But we moved away from that 500 years ago, or 300 years ago, by having a democratic system where the shareholders or the members of the institution get a chance to have a say on what's happening. And coming back to the issue of the loyalty to party, and when do you put the country before the perception or convention of loyalty? That is nothing new. I put it to everybody, I put it in the country in the letter, that there have been instances that has been recorded where figures, well-renowned historical figures, put aside their party hats in lieu of a unified approach to governance based on the system, based on the situation. And the example that jumps out to mind first is Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, a conservative, in World War II, he realized that he had to have the backing of the British people to go to war. And he crossed party lines. He brought on the leader of the opposition as a cabinet minister in a unity government to go to war in Europe because it was a critical issue. So my question is, when you have parliamentarians today, like myself, and I can tell you my colleagues who now sit on the southern benches of the parliament, we've all made a particular stand that, where we are and the crisis that we find ourselves in this country, there are certain matters that has to go beyond politics, beyond party politics, more so the issue of crime. And I made a statement during the budget debate that I am going to give my support legislatively. I'm not a police officer. I don't have a firearm to run down bandit. But what I have is legislative power that I can give to the Prime Minister, who has the authority to empower the state agencies to run the criminals down. And the Prime Minister does have a huge burden on his hands to deal with that. And if my support of key crime legislation can stop a toddler from being shot, as I said, can stop a pensioner from being robbed, or can stop another family from having to be the victim of a home invasion, then I will give that support. And anybody who disagree with that position, well, I suspect they're very happy to see the blood of children scattered on the roads of Trinidad and Tobago. And I will leave that there for your questions.
MP, coming out of the internal election, right? The United Patriots had a very specific campaign. It was about strengthening the institution. You all put forward this message in saying that you would work with anybody, it didn't matter who the political leader was. And despite putting forward that message, there was this notion from the opposing side that you all were attempting to coup the political leader. I don't know if you have ever had to clarify this, but I want to give you the opportunity here to speak to that specifically. Was that an intention?
No, absolutely not. At the end of the day, from day one, the campaign, I mean, the office of the political leader was never up for contention. It was never up for contention. There were 17 positions in the national executive that was up for contention. And and from the offset, we said that we are going to work with the political leader, whoever he or she will be, whether it is Mrs. Prasad Bisesa now or somebody else next year, because there is a leadership election that is due in 2025 prior to the general election. So that is something that is on the drawing board for next year. And there may be an opportunity to call for that election as well. Right, because there is, in 2010 there was a leadership election in January of 2010, and the People's Partnership won handsomely in May. So to go tell the public that we can't have a leadership election 6 or 8 months before a general election, that's just fallacy. So it can happen, and perhaps the party may demand that next year. But in terms of this issue to coup, I mean, that was cannon fodder on the political platforms. I mean, it was an argument. There were many arguments that were made. I mean, they went on a hatchet job after me, making it clear that I am this PNM operative that have come to mash up the party. There was one particular person who went in a public forum and said that he had evidence that I collected $500,000 from senior PNM operatives to mash up the UNC. But you know what I've done? When the election was over, and I wrote the chairman and the general secretary of the party, and I told both of them that I congratulated the newly sworn in national executive. There were issues that I saw in the election that I weren't happy with. However, with the interests of the party not being in turmoil, I will leave it there. And we will go forward working with the NATEX to solve the issues that I raised during the campaign. Because while the STAR team won, we have to address because the issues we campaign on were serious issues, and I felt that we need to address it. I also wrote that there were serious allegations that were made against me. I told the chairman and the general secretary that because those allegations were so serious, it has created a bit of a, want of a better word, a hostile working environment with some of my very own colleagues, councillors, aldermen, chairmen of corporations. And I wanted the party to launch an investigation on those things. And I listed the allegations and I listed the persons who made the allegations. And I said, look, if your investigation find one iota of evidence to corroborate what was said, I will do the honorable thing and leave. I will resign from the Parliament, I will resign from the UNC, and I will leave. Now that is July this year. Up to today, not the chairman, not the CEO, Dr. Gopi Singh, not a single person has responded to that email. Why? Because it was nonsense, it was foolishness, and that was uncalled for. And as of today, nobody has responded. Nobody. I even sent the email to every single MP who would have made comments on the platform or on Facebook. I said, look, if you say that you know as a PNM operative, show me the information and send it to the NATEX. Let them launch an investigation, because you make a claim, you must have evidence. Not a single person have done it. So you know what? I am solid in my view that it was just foolishness, and they peddled foolishness to the detriment of the party.
Let me ask you something, MP. Why not sue? Why not take it to the court?
So two things. I understand there have been rulings in the past, and if I were to draw your attention to a case between Mr. Pandey and Ken Gordon, there was a case where comments were made on a political platform, and somewhere along the line in the ruling, the judge said, look, in the cut and thrust of politics, sometimes commentaries are made, and in the best interest, it doesn't reach the how you put it, the level of being libelous or scandalous, or whatever word that they use. And I think the case was shut down. Now, you want to go to court on these matters, but it ties you up for 5-10 years. You go out and you make this lacqueray, and prior to the elections, it was to make the party stronger, not to weaken the party. So I believe taking some of that to the public domain, it weakens the party that I am part of, that I still believe that the UNC is still the best vehicle to governance. I have no problem with my party. I have some problems with the leadership decisions of the party. And as a member of this party, I have a right to say it. Now, why is it being said in public? Because every institution of the party internally has collapsed. So there's nobody to talk to. So what do? You understand? Yes, so those are the things we were trying to change with new leadership, not the political leader. I'm talking about the national executive, which governs the party. We felt those are the things, the systems that had to change, had to build. So why is an activist being rude to an MP on Facebook? That shouldn't be. An activist must have a process, a procedure in the internal runnings of the party. If he's unhappy with his MP, he must be able to make a complaint. A committee must be able to call the MP and say, look, your activists in your constituency say you're not doing A, B, C, D, F, G. What can we do to resolve the problem? So there is no public bashing of anybody. But because of the failure of the organs of the party, you have this perception of wide indiscipline happening in the party because the organs are not working. And that's what we were challenging.
Now, we're coming out of the budget. Actually, yesterday was the budget wrapped up yesterday in the Senate. I don't know, Marsha. I know you probably would have looked as well. And I know that it can be a bit lengthy. The entire budget process is lengthy. The speeches are lengthy. The standard for everything's lengthy. But I listened to each MP speak. Of course, we have a general election next year. And as a citizen, somebody who's going to vote next year, I wanted to hear from the government a justified spent moving forward. And I wanted to hear from the opposition, should they be in the position of government if they should win? What do they plan to do? I wanted to hear that productive, fruitful conversation. Interestingly, informally, there are now 3 benches in Parliament, in the lower house, right? Marsha, you are a senator, in the Senate, there are 3 benches. Well, now, in the lower house, there are also now 3 benches. And the level of debate, you use this line, the line and length, right, in the communication that these 5 MPs took was vastly different from the rest of the UNC MPs. And I think it translated quite well with the media and also with the anybody listening on. Did you notice that as well? Did you notice the difference, the quality of debate difference? MP?
Oh yeah, I mean, I hate to blow my own horn, but I could tell you, prior to the budget debate, there was never 3 benches. There was always 2 benches. I had indicated, and I've always indicated post the election to the media, that internal party matters are internal party matters. The election was over. There are issues that I have raised, and I will continue to engage the national executive. While I'm not happy with the speed of the responses, but internal party matters will remain. I also mentioned in the media that there is one UNC in the parliament. The enemy is the political enemy is the PNM, the crime rate, foreign exchange, lack of foreign investment, collapse in infrastructure. Those things are the enemy. And we remain solid in the party, and we remain under the hand of the whip. And I can tell you, from time to time, I would reach out to the chief and say, Chief, look, what's the position on these bills coming? Just to make sure that we are in sync, because our job is to strengthen the party. And that was working fine. Until MP Paray come and he started to throw a tantrum on Anita and call us a PNM B team and that kind of foolishness. He created that 3rd bench. It was never there prior to when he spoke, unfortunately, but he wants a 3rd bench, clearly.
Let me ask you a question, MP. You spoke about internal leadership elections are carded for next year.
Yeah.
When are they due? I've lost track.
I'm not sure exactly which month, but I know it may be February or March of next year in terms of the 3-year cycle for political leader.
Are you prepared to champion the cause to call for elections when they're constitutionally due?
Well, I can tell you, if not me, somebody's going to do it. If not me, somebody is going to do it, because I can tell you, we still maintain that the party is still well not tooled and oiled appropriately to take on the PNM and an election next year. We have about 9 months if our calculations are good. It is doable, but I mean, look, the election was over since June. We're going to head into November just now. And if anybody could tell me one thing that has changed from then to now to better prepare us for the election, well, that'll be news to me.
Well, I think something has changed. I think I have seen the difference between the Patriots and the Stars. And I think Trinidad and Tobago has seen the difference. And I think we have seen which crop of UNC we prefer. Marsha, do you think that's visible now? A bit more visible now?
Honestly, I live in Diego Martin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, well, so okay. There are 2 things. The reality is, and I say it frank, while Kamala Prasad-Bissess is political leader, UNC not going anywhere. I want to bring we have 15 minutes with MP Paray here, and I want to discuss, yes, we love, here's a comment from the audience. Anita Haynes, Russian Paray, Dinesh Rambali, and Rai Ragbir should run as independents. Exactly, because we still seem to be going down this kind of tribal path. And I want to answer for MP, but I want to let MP a ton. because it's the same thing that I feel when people say, why I don't go join the PNM, why I don't go. But I am a member of the UNC, and I don't understand why I must be forced to leave the UNC and run any which way somewhere else.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, if we can't stand up in our own house and fix the post, the column, the beams, fix the leaks, why are we running? I've invested 13 years. I mean, I was not in active politics before 2015, but I was involved in it. I've invested time, effort, money, sacrificed, family, my children, because I have a desire to serve at a much higher level. And as I mentioned before, when you look at the two political entities we have in this country, the UNC that I joined in 2013, somewhere around there, that is not the UNC of today. There is something that I saw back then in terms of its ability to look at the development of rural communities. I mean, Kamla Persad-Bissessar as Prime Minister. I mean, say what you want. As a mother, as a grandmother, policy comes from your heart, not your head. And a lot of the policies that the People's Partnership under her tenure in terms of looking after the most vulnerable in the society. And you know what's funny, right? I remember going to Mexico City with the Speaker of the House and one or two other government MPs on one of those parliamentary projects. And one of the MPs from Guatemala, they were talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, the 2030 goals that countries would have signed up to. And he was talking about all these things that they were going to do to put themselves in place for the 2030 SDGs. I know what they were talking about? Food cards, baby grants, milk grants. And I'm saying, we did that 5 years ago, and the PNM come and say that, we waste the money, we steal out the money, we give it away. And those are things that Guatemala was now going to do to line themselves up to deliver on their 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So, I mean, something has changed drastically from that version of the UNC to what we have now. And that is the issue that I continue to have. And I am not going to be chased away now, and I'm not leaving. I made that very, very clear. Because I have a stake in this party, I have a stake in this country. And if any foolishness or anybody is foolhardy to feel that they're going to come after Rushton Parry to make it turn back on a party that I belong to, or a country that I have no interest in ever leaving, then there's something else coming. Seriously.
I have a question. You've said something has changed. At present, we have two deputy political leaders who are before the courts. We have our chief whip is out on bail. And, we would have just seen in the news that, the Privy Council would have ruled basically saying, we're keeping the Court of Appeal ruling with the whole, and I wanna keep it to Dr. Rudal Munilal, because we're talking UNC, we're talking opposition. So I don't want to call the private contractors and whatnot.
Yeah.
MP Munilal has put out a release that's saying basically, listen, this is PNM. PNM has come out and they're the ones who have PNM versus Munilal. I have spoken about it publicly. I've said that to me, there's a double standard. We called for the Prime Minister to speak when Taklalsingh, there was this interim restraining order, which means there is no proof of it. It's an allegation. And our political leader would have spoken and said, the Prime Minister must speak on the issue. Taklalsingh subsequently resigned over it. We have Foster Cummings. We were all in the news. We were, Kamla spoke about it. We had MP Indara speak on it, calling for not just Foster to be fired, but for Camille Robinson, Regis, and Hines to be fired based on their knowledge of it and whatever. And that was just a special branch report. Before that, when Kamla Persad-Bissessar was the Prime Minister, she would have fired several of her ministers. I'm thinking Gary here, because he would not even have been the subject of the investigation. He would have been a witness in the investigation. And he was fired with her claiming that, listen, he is part of an investigation. Whether he's a subject or not, he's part of the investigation. Even if he's just a witness in the investigation, he's part of the investigation and should be fired. So when, what's your take? You're willing to comment?
Yeah, I mean, I look, at the end of the day, you have every person is innocent until proven guilty. That is the maxim in our legal system. In terms of the chief whip, there has been a sufficiency of evidence that when before the DPP felt there was enough evidence that they believe that they can be successful in a claim of corruption in public office and whatever the other two charges. A charge was laid against our chief whip, and he will have his day in court to prove his innocence. In Dr. Munilal's case, Dr. Munilal is not charged for anything, right? He's not before the court on a charge. Now, this matter is a civil matter. So there's a difference between a criminal matter and a civil matter. So what happens in the United States? A lot of cases where you use RICO and charges on corruption and so on, when the threshold of the evidence doesn't meet the standard for a criminal offense, they drop it as civil offense. So in this case, there's a civil case where the state, which is EMBD, is saying, look, you guys falsely received money to the sum of about $275 million, to what I recall reading in the newspaper. And it was done, what we feel, via bid rigging, and we want back we money, right? So basically, that's the case. Now, somewhere in the abode version of the case, which was, I think that happened in the last parliament, they did speak about ministerial activity and so on inside there. I don't think any case was made out against any minister, but there was a conversation that, ministers or persons in government from PSs and so on, there may have been some collusion. But the evidence at that time, as far as I recall, it did not meet the threshold for criminal offenses. So I want a position where we are now. The case, the contractors went to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council said, no, there are no case. Or there really are no grounds to stand upon. Look, we upholding the appeal court thing that by November 6th, all they need to file a defense. Now, I looked at the statement that Dr. Munilal put out there. He claims that he has always had a statement, but his attorneys would have advised him, don't jump out before everybody else. Let's see what's happening. Before the courts, whatever is happening, whatever the court rule, well, then we will act. So in fairness to Dr. Munilal, and if I have to take him for his word, he would have had his defense prepared, and he was just waiting for the Privy Council ruling. Now the Privy Council has ruled, his defense is ready, and I see that he may well put forward a defense. But this is where it gets tricky. In any civil matter, even at a commission of inquiry, if we were to go back to the Paray Commission of Inquiry, the DPP in any matter don't have to wait for a complainant. He doesn't have to wait for a complainant. While evidence is being given, whether it's at a commission of inquiry, whether it's at a joint select committee meeting, whether it's at a civil matter, if the DPP is listening, well, through himself or through his agents, and there is clear evidence of a criminal offense, the DPP can act on his own merit. He doesn't have to wait. Now, bid rigging is a criminal offense. It is a high criminal offense. So if, when those defenses are filed and the court matter starts, then if the DPP hears that somebody or some group of persons or some individual would have acted in violation of the criminal law, the DPP can lay a charge without having to wait for somebody to come and ask him. So it is going to be very interesting to see what happens post November 6th when these defenses are filed, because when the defenses are filed, well, then the matter may go back down to the magistrate court to be heard. So it's not anything that's going to happen anytime soon. I think this case may well wiggle on for another year or two. But, it's a civil matter and there's no criminal offense in this particular case.
Right. They're serious allegations, though, right? And I go back to, I want to ask the question straight. Do you believe that the chief whip of the opposition and the member of parliament for Point of Pay should be called to step down, clear his name, and come back, as would have been asked when she asked on Jack Warner to clear his name and come back, Anil Roberts to clear his name and come back, Gary Griffith, and so on?
My simple answer is yes.
Yes, you believe that
Yes.
he should step down, clear his name, and come back.
Any public official, be it an MP, be it a member of the government, a public officer, as long as there are serious allegations about you, and looking at the consistency at which Mrs. Prasad Bisesa has operated over the last 10 years, even while she was in government, she told people, if there are these strong allegations against you, step aside, clear your name, and come back. You look at Jack Warner, right? That was the conversation to him. Anand Ram Logan, Gerard Ramdeen. All of these men were asked to step aside. So one is going to ask, well, why are others being held at a different standard, right? And that is where it becomes a bit blurred, in that clearly, all is not equal on the animal farm. Right?
And you said that something has changed.
Yes,
and that's why I brought it up, because I would suggest, I may be a bit more harsh to the political leader than you are. I've asked questions. Is it that these persons have something on her? Are they blackmailing her? Has she gotten accustomed to the power? Has power gotten to her head? And I know we're going to talk about Keith Rowley and his birthday today and the third term and whatnot. So I'll leave that for later on, so that it'll tie into everything. But sometimes being in a position of power for too long can damage you. That could be one of the reasons for the call for term limits, etc. Right?
Yes.
And certainly I believe that this is one of the manifestations. It's a clear example of something that has changed. The United National Congress was always prepared to serve at a higher level than the PNM. So we did not stoop to, well, PNM do it, so we do it too.
Yeah.
We always stood above. And some persons would have said that she committed political suicide when she was prime minister. And you said in your, I'm going back to your letter to the editor, where you said sometimes stepping aside is not an admission of guilt. It's just doing the right thing. And at the end of the day, what we have against Dr. Munilal is a finding that has been affirmed all the way up to the Privy Council, that the case alleged by EMBD has sufficient basis to go to trial, right? And that's the bottom line, that the allegations, these are serious allegations. And all the way up to the Privy Council, they have affirmed that there is there's a case, that needs to be heard, that needs to be tested, that needs to go to trial.
The case needs to be answered. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
But look how complex it brings us now.
Leswith Foster for Cummings.
But look at it. We have a political organization with a political leader who is 74, 75. I mean, anybody can see that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa is not in the best of health. I mean, you have to be blinded not to see that. But we have 3 deputy political leaders, and my respectful view, none of them are fit to take the helm of the party. You have, Chief Whip Lee, he has his matters before the court. So I don't think he is an ideal candidate for that. You have Senator John. She can't take lead because she's a senator. You ought to be a sitting MP if you have to, become a political leader during a term of parliament. Otherwise, you'd have to go and fight for a seat somewhere. And now you have this case with, Dr. Munilal, who in some quarters are seen as the heir apparent at the end of the day.
Well, he's certainly frontlined. I mean, I think he you talk backbench, he is as front bench can be.
That's correct.
See him in answering questions that the political leader should be answering.
Absolutely, he's a gladiator. Nobody argues with that,
He's there, front and center.
But Marsha, to win an election in this country, no party, neither the PNM or the UNC base, can put you into government. There's about 130, 140,000 swing voters who either party have to convince that I am ready to govern. And let me tell you, because we have a more astute electorate today, more connected electorate, your candidates for MPs are being tested, or they are being scrutinized to be managers of government. And when you can't pass the threshold, because governance is management, in business, governance is management. You are asking, we want 41 men and women to manage a $50 billion economy for the next 5 years, $50 billion a year. And when that swing vote is not convinced that your team, who we are presenting to you, that who are going to be the managers of our money, then what do they do? And I mean, sometimes the fallback position is to stay with the devil, you know. And that is where we are saying that if we can refresh and revive and re-energize and improve the gravitational pull of the UNC, where more persons can come and lend a hand and give an idea, and we stop rejecting people. Because politics is about growing numbers, it's not about reducing. It's about growing.
I mean, look at the comment that came early on in the show that these 5 MPs should go as independents. You know, I mean, well, I've been called PNM. So we seem to be rejecting more than accepting members.
Yeah, and that's what we not ought to be doing. And listen, I have employees, right? And I am telling you that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa failed miserably in managing this. She failed miserably up front, and she failed miserably after. Because if I was in her position, as soon as the election was finished in a week, I was going to call everybody and say, Paray, Haynes, Rai, Rodney, Rambalelo, come. What the hell wrong with all this? Right? What is the problem? How can we repair it? How can we fix it? We have an election to win. Tell me what you want me to do. I'm going to meet all you halfway and let me win an election together. How hard that was to do?
MP, so I'm guessing you have not
Clearly
spoken
very
to
hard.
us yet?
The last day I spoke to the political leader was the 22nd of February, 2024.
But you all sit not to, I mean, yeah, they nearly put you outside the parliament, but you all sit on the same bench.
Oh yeah, we sit on the same bench, but I don't think they see us. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I will be walking down the corridor on the left. They are walking down the corridor on the right. And rather than do the manly thing and raise your head and watch me in my face, you do the cowardly thing by bending your head and watch the floor. That is what you deal with in 2024 in the parliament.
And you're speaking specifically about some of the MPs that you, but this is on your bench.
Of course. They do like they don't see you. You bounce them up in the male bathroom. Not even a hi or a hello.
But
that's
MPs,
the pettiness, the childishness that we're dealing with, boy.
No, but I have a question.
Senator Don said that Kamala Prasad Bisesa was a unifier and that she would find a way to unify after the internal election.
Absolutely, she's not. I'm sorry. I mean, she's not.
Sad.
I don't think she has a clue how to do that.
But MP, so my question now is, you have put forward your nomination papers.
Yes.
Do you believe that you are going to have a fair chance at the screening committee to retain the seat of Mayaro as a UNC candidate?
It's going to be very difficult. I'm going to tell you why it's going to be very difficult in the 5 minutes that I have left, right? When you are in a leadership position, leaders ought to be very careful with your words, because there are 3 things that don't come back: the spent arrow, the broken the missed opportunities, and the spoken word. They don't come back. And there were allegations that were made about Rushton Paray on the campaign trail. Very serious allegations about being, as I said before, PNM operative, come to mash up the party and so on. Now, how does Paray go before a screening committee with the very same people who made those allegations and say, well, Paray, we want you back in my arena? How do you square that with the membership? We now tell you, Paray, I mean, there was a campaign, Paray must go. There was a campaign, Paray must go. So Paray come to go before a screening committee. How you? The same men who make those allegations go say, boy, we need Paray because we want to win mayor. How are you going to square that with the membership without losing your own credibility? And I think that is where the conundrum is going to land. And I am well prepared to go before the screening committee and present myself and answer their questions. And I may have a few questions of myself to answer.
If you're not chosen, what's your next step?
Well, as I told the media, that's a question that comes up all the time. I do believe that I have tremendous worth. I do believe I have a contribution to make to national development. I've worked well with everyone. And if the UNC doesn't see the value that I can bring to them, I think somebody is going to see the value somewhere. And I will look at my options at that time.
Well, I want to say,
but you're not leaving.
No, I'm not leaving. I'm not giving you the pleasure to see my back.
But I want to say something, and I try to prompt the introduction this way, is that I think what you have done and what the other 4 MPs, collectively 5, you all have done, I think you have excited the politics in that you all are it was very genuine, Marsha. This was not forced up or it wasn't performative, and I think that you may have also secretly inspired a few politicians in standing up for democracy within their political organization.
Well, clearly we've lit a fire in the PNM, so they're looking for peace of the action too.
What is the crosstalk like though now?
Oh, it's absolutely fun, absolutely fun. Because I mean, I hear the conversations. I mean, we do pass on the corridor. And we know there are internal rumblings, and it has intensified because of the positions that we took. Anita's contribution that day in the Parliament was one of the best contributions I've heard in my 9 years inside there. When she said, "Don't sit down and warm seat. If you can't be part of the change, get up and leave. What you doing here?" Those things resonated well. And I could tell you, the country is waiting with bated breath, sir. I could tell you there's stuff coming to improve this country, and stay tuned.
We will stay tuned.
We will definitely stay tuned. Thank you so much, MP Paray, for taking the time. And for me, you did not say no comment when I brought up the issue of David Lee and Dr. Munilal. And I think that is what certainly I'm looking for in a politician. One, someone who's not afraid to tackle the hard decisions. And as I say, when I read that letter to the editor, this is what we're looking for. I asked you to name some persons. You did when name some people who were able to do it. Unfortunately, I didn't name any in Trinidad, but maybe we'll put Rush and Parry down in history for being able to be that change that we want to see. I know that you have Chris and my support.
Yes.
Because we want to see a change. We want to see people who are not prepared to be blindly loyal, who will stand on, policies, stand on, will have their moral compass, not their hunger for success or greed drive them.
I will end by saying this, right? There's this whole concept of loyalty to leader and so on. And I believe that you have to be loyal to an idea or an ideal, because that will last longer than the man. The man will fail. The world turns, people change. That nobody remains stoic for years. They change. But if you are loyal to an idea or an ideal, that will stand the test of time. And I believe that is what we have to do. So when a man tell me, Parry boy, I support you, and you hammer support and whatever, I say, listen, we support the positions that are taken. Right? Support that and strengthen the positions that are taken. Because in 5 years or 10 years when I'm not here, I want 10,000 other people to take that same position or to anchor something going forward on that. Because the minute you anchor on flesh, look at the problems you're getting today. So look, you anchor on the ideas and the ideals, and I think we could reshape Trinidad and Tobago. I always say we are a young republic. Whatever is happening, these are the teething problems we're having. Look at the United States, 270-something years, and look at the mess them in still after 200 odd years. So it's a work in progress, and we have to be willing to continue to push and continue to work for the betterment of everybody in this country. And while I have the health and strength and the position to do it, I'll continue doing it.
Awesome.
Right. Okay.
Thank you so very much for coming on, MP.
Take care. All right. Have a good evening, everybody. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Oh, I
Marsha,
was going to leave the studio, right? It's not me logging out, it's just MP.
but Marsha, I know that things didn't go the way the Patriots planned for it to go in the UNC.
Mm-hmm.
But they are not the first group of dissidents. There are two very Dr. Rowley. He was a
Yes.
dissident.
Yeah, he was. Yes.
Mrs. Fasad Visasa.
Yes, she was.
And so these dissenting voices, though some may feel as though they have
Are you trying
won.
to give me hope here today?
No, I'm just saying some may think they may have won the battle, but it's really about the political war. And I do think that there's an underestimation when it comes to MP Paray, especially MP Paray. I think Anita Haynes as well, Alan. And I don't think they're going anywhere,
Well, I hope not. When I read the letter to the editor, as I said, it did give me hope. First of all, when I read it, I replied, name 5. When he said, the strongest political leaders have this, and I said, name 5 who didn't walk away, and I'm gonna find it. Let me find the conversation, and I'm gonna find the conversation. We have an attorney at law, Kiel Taklalsingh. I know you like Kiel as well. I love Kiel.
Oh, I know. I love Kiel is in the media weekly now.
Yes.
I saw he won another case recently. I know he's invited on today to speak about the RBL case. But Kiel,
no, 2 cases.
2 cases. He's the second one as well.
Yes, so he's gonna speak. Because I wanted to know about what was the, his case kind of tied into the procurement legislation, which is fairly new in terms of, well, not fairly new, but it's in terms of the rolling out of it. And his case would have set, I think, the tone for it. So I wanted him to come and speak on that.
But that was a big judgment,
That's
I don't know if Trinidad and Tobago really understood. So maybe you're right.
So that's So I wanted him to come on to really explain it, break it down. And Kiel has a way of breaking things down very simply.
He's another one. He was a part of the United Patriots team.
Yes, he was. But I was trying to, so that our biases don't come through.
Marsha, are you biased? Is Hard Talk a show now for only United Patriots UNC MPs?
You know what? Actually, it's not, because I sent a message to Minister Hines. I had invited him on the show. So they had an opportunity to speak on my show. But
you have his phone number. Very good.
I'm a journalist, I can get a phone number if I post a television show. And I pledge to be independent. I can get telephone numbers. I pick up the phone and I say, hey, so. I invited the political leader of what is PEA? What is a Progressive Empowerment Party? He is a political leader. I invited him. All kind of re with him, but
nobody is a journalist.
I try not to give him any airtime. So let's not go there.
No,
let me tell you who I also invited, and it was quite a disappointment, is Michaela Pandey. And she replied. But it hasn't happened. And I invited her several times, and so. But I have spoken publicly when people talk about Michaela. I say, I see Brian Manning name jumping up.
Yeah, why?
Exactly. But they say how he could be in the running for leading PNM.
No, I don't think. Who you think is in the running for first of all?
Stop it.
The platform.
I feel like nobody should be in the running. I feel like PNM should just be in the garbage.
No. Hold on. I think that with the PNM, we need to ensure that we understand that the political leader's position, political leader, general secretary, and chairman, those 3 positions, they're due in 2026, They're due in 2026. So
yes, which means chances are Keith Rowley is going into.
Correct.
We don't have Kiel for too long, so I don't want to take up Kyle's time. I see he's there, or maybe he gone again. Kiel, are you there?
I am here. Hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you and seeing you.
Let me
So
check.
we'll talk about the political landscape after Kyle leaves, Chris. Hold that talk. Just make sure and remember it. Write it down or something.
I could speak about the political landscape as well.
Well, you can, but the problem is if you're prepared to stay for the hour, you can do that. If you're only staying for a little bit of time, then you have to talk about this judgment.
Sure.
Okay, and if you're enjoying our company,
I can.
We were saying that we have to help these people like yourself who's stuck in central traffic. We have to help them pass the traffic so that they don't realize they're stuck in traffic. So if you want to join us and you want to grab a cup of tea or cup of coffee and stay with us till 6 o'clock, we have to talk about the Prime Minister's birthdays today. We have plenty to talk about.
We have to wish him happy birthday.
Yeah. I didn't say that, but okay.
Marsha, don't be petty.
I'm not being petty. I wish him long health and success in life. I pray for him that he will see this side of righteousness and that he will repent for all his evil ways.
Chris, what do you wish?
So first of all, I just want to say that I do not, any views by Marsha Walker is not reflected in my. No, I genuinely, I really want to wish the Prime Minister a happy birthday because I know that the cut and thrust of the politics can really get us into a toxic place at times. But he has made a contribution to the national politics, whether you like it or not. He has really taken the People's National Movement from where they once were. From 2010 to where they are today. And I think that, as a political leader, I think he can go down in history as one of the best political leaders ever in this country. I think he's well accomplished in terms of the academia field. He's someone that I still like to listen to in Parliament. I think he's one of the best debaters in Parliament, one of the best orators. And he is in good health, he's in good shape. I have met the Prime Minister a couple of times. I don't know if you would remember because he would meet a number of persons and very pleasant, very likable. And so I wish him a very happy birthday and all the best. Yeah.
I think I did very well to not interrupt you and I gave you all that speaking time.
Okay, Marsha.
As a human being, I really do wish him all the best. But all of them thing that you just
what else it could be, Marsha, as a human being.
Right, man. So he is a fellow human being. He's a fellow Trinidadian.
He's our Prime Minister.
He is our Prime Minister, and so I respect the position of Prime Minister. But the Prime Minister's seat and office is not celebrating his birthday.
Well, Marsha, we know you went to Digomat in Wester.
Guys, I just have to take a quick call from a senior lawyer. I will join you back, right?
No problem. That is fine. Chris and I are having it out at the moment. Listen, it's not about just politics. No. Let's get it straight. It's not just about one. It's not about politics, right? It's not. He has not performed well as an MP. Let's get that straight. He has been arrogant as a Prime Minister. Let's get that straight. He has said some of the worst things in history. Let's get that straight. Okay?
My question to you, though.
He's a political leader, and I noticed you said political leader. So fine, I will give him that. That he has done well. He has done well to champion whatever he championed to become the political leader. Because I don't think he was never part of no cabinet. Well, I think he served as housing minister or whatever. But
agriculture.
Something. But yeah, okay. But but
my question, I have a question for you, about that.
Let me hear.
It would have been relatively not new to public life because a lot of persons know Marsha Lorraine, right? It's
Riley, yes, they knew me as Riley before.
Yeah. So it's not like you were new. We knew who you were, but in terms of politics, you were new. But you were going up against the Prime Minister.
Well, no, and I want to say something about that.
Were you afraid?
No, I was not. I didn't. Maybe it just, I don't know. So, and when people talk about Kamala give you this, Kamala give you that, I go, first of all, name one person who went up against a sitting Prime Minister and all, you know their names still.
No, that's true. No, I don't know. I can't think of. I could think of one person,
Mm-hmm. Who?
but it's only because I like the person I could think of that
Well,
one.
tell me who.
Ashaki Scott.
Okay. She went up against.
No, oh my gosh, that would make sense. He wasn't the prime minister at the time, so yeah.
Yeah. So you might have gone up against somebody who became the prime minister. You might have gone up against somebody who became the prime minister.
The former prime minister seat. Yeah,
Yes.
because I think it was Randall Mitchell she went up against. But if not Diego Martin West, what would have been the seat? No. If UNC, because you're part of the
Well,
UNC.
I like UN. First of all, I like Diego Martin West because that's where I'm born and bred, you know?
Yes, big yard. Yes, fed up, tell us. I don't know where big yard is.
But you need to come and see.
Just like Anita.
You know what gets me mad is when people talk about privilege. And I just be like, oh, they real don't know, you know. Oh, they real don't know.
No, because so I learn about places in Trinidad, but also through the politics, right? So I would always listen to Anita and her contributions talk about carrots, Tortuga Brothers Road, and I'm like, huh, that's a key to have a red place, boy. But if UNC was in a good place right now, the leadership was, in optimum, right? The party was in its good place.
What seat would I want?
You would be,
what seat would I want?
What would you screen for? What would you find for?
That's a hard question. Let me tell you why. Because my heart is definitely with Diego Martin West. So it would depend. Because I think had we been working Diego Martin West, had the party and been firing the way it should work, with a proper constituency executive, with us being on the ground and whatnot, I do actually think we can bring Diego Martin West home. I think that the seats, the numbers show that we can bring Diego Martin West home. I keep saying, unlike Saparia, it would take a miracle for PNM to win in a UNC safe seat when you look at the numbers, because they don't win with like 30, 40% of the votes. They win with 70 and 80% of the votes. So you have to convert a UNC member in Diego Martin West, Diego Martin Northeast, and Diego Martin Central. Again, not like Laventil or Silots, not like Port of Spain and stuff, right? Those three seats in particular, what the PNM wins with is a very low voter turnout. Prior to myself, UNC, I think it was Daphne Phillips was the last person who ran for UNC. We don't put people there. And I try to tell people, when people say, Kamala, give me a chance. I said, let me tell you something. I ran for Diego Martin West. You think they have a lineup? This is not Princestown. They have no lineup to run in Diego Martin West as a UNC candidate.
So I just want to, we have persons in their car who are probably listening to us and don't change your channel, right? Don't do that. So fun fact, Daphne Phillips actually acted as Prime Minister,
She did.
A lot of persons think that Kamala Persad-Bissessar would have been the first female Prime Minister. No, we actually had somebody who acted. I mean, that was fun
yes,
nugget.
Would have been, yes.
Yeah, fun nuggets, right? Let's just
that's
give
true.
Daphne her flowers. But so Diego Martin Central specifically, I saw in 2010. That was one of the easier seats. I think
Diego Martin Northeast came the closest.
Really? It wasn't Central?
Yes. It was Diego Martin Northeast.
How
and in
close was
fact,
it?
Diego Martin, so fun fact, Diego Martin West would not have been a UNC candidate. Diego Martin Northeast was a UNC candidate.
And how close? What was the margin like?
600 or 500 or something.
Really?
Yes. And it was a UNC seat versus the others were a COP seat.
Wow.
Fun fact.
Maybe that should be a segment in your show, fun fact.
I try to raise little fun facts throughout. But yeah, so I think if you do the work, I think if we really do the work where you do the walking, you have people like Kiel on the NATEX who can be he would be policy. So I don't know if he would be the person.
I don't want. I have an issue with trying to put Kyle in a box, a political box, because I feel as though that he is someone that can speak on almost anything and everything.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Which so Kyle, we want to welcome you to Power 102 Hard Talk with Marsha. I am the
Yep.
guest co-host. Yes, I am
Guest
Chris.
co-host. That's a Natex position, or that's a it should be.
Kyle, are you suggesting that the NatX creates fake positions to make people feel important?
I'm suggesting that the UNC should be open to some constitutional reform, and we should review the positions in Natex. That's what I'm saying.
So with that,
Listen, I tell you
Wait,
what,
this is
if
a
y'all going
live
to have,
thing.
yes,
should
it is.
believe.
It's just a live thing, huh? So y'all need to be
Like,
safe.
and people are listening to us in their cars right now, right?
Yeah, good. So I could expect
Kyle.
a few inbox
Kyle.
messages later.
We have a message that said Anita Haynes, Rushton Parry, Dinesh Rambley, and Rai Ragbir should run as independents. What are your thoughts on that?
No, definitely not.
Give me more than that now. No,
Definitely
he's a
not.
lawyer.
I mean, I've always
Defend
felt
the
that-
answer now.
No, definitely not. I mean, why are you running as an independent? I think there's a political reality to face. Running as you mean, now it depends on what they mean by independent. Do they mean a third party that they're going to form? Or do they mean that just everybody running their own constituencies as independent candidates? I think as independent candidates, they're not going to make much of an impact. I think you probably may lose your deposit in some circumstances. And you may just run counter to what you're actually trying to achieve. Because as far as I understand, the five of them, they want change in government. They definitely want the PNM gone. And they want a better and stronger UNC. I don't know if coming out of the UNC to run as an independent and to potentially assist the PNM in winning the seats that they're already in is going to help.
Yeah. Well, I prefer Rushton Parry's response, by the way. He not leaving. You're not seeing his back.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
why I
it's
said
my
no.
party. It's my
but
party.
Marsha, is
With
is
my
he
party, I am a UNC member, and you can't push me out.
I agree with
Marsha,
that.
he gave the same response.
Interestingly, the day
He
after
did not.
the
He did not
Interestingly,
give
the
the same
day-
response. He
the
gave a
day
very
after the
lawyer
Natex-
response, like he's a
day
lawyer.
after
or
the
something.
Natex response, the day after the Natex poll,
But
the
Kyle,
Monday.
I'm only allowing you to speak with your face like this because your name is in your mouth.
Oh,
But when you start to talk about RBL and stuff, I'm gonna ask you because Kyle
That better?
always says kind of to put your head more to the right, to the left. Yeah, right. Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
good.
Stay right there.
I'm
Don't
using,
do
an, I'm using an iPad and I'm on my couch, so you'll have to excuse the informality. Right.
That's fine. But you know that you speak. Kyle is, I don't know if Kyle is like TikTok worthy, right? So he says these things and you have to stay quiet. Don't interrupt him because guaranteed he's going to say like the most eloquent 2-minute something that you can clip, put on TikTok and get good views.
I agree.
I'm also a fair dancer, so if you want to do a TikTok dance, I can as well.
No, please don't do that. Kyle, that is not the politics. I think you should subscribe too. But
Understood.
no, but interestingly, I want to ask you something because, of course, and as we get into the interview a bit more, and we're going to get to some of your cases, you are not just an attorney at law at this point. I think you are now, I would consider you a politician in Trinidad and Tobago. That when you, and it's interesting, Marsha, because we have very few, you are one of them, who do not have seats, but we still want to hear what they have to say on current affairs. And so recently, recently, you would have taken to Facebook and you spoke about the parliamentary conduct, and you went viral for it. And of course, I want to give you the opportunity here for some of the persons who didn't see the post, to speak more on that and what you said on Facebook and why I think it resonated so well.
Well, I think coming out of the incident, I don't have to repeat the words or the incident. I think most people are very familiar with some words that was thrown in quote-unquote crosstalk, but across the floor, some very insulting language and commentary. I think there was a little bit of an uproar in the population already. And I just expressed myself because I think that Parliament is sacrosanct. It's sacred in terms of democracy. You know, we ought to reserve Parliament for the most mature, the most deliberate, and the most intellectual of conversations, because that's what the people of the population have put parliamentarians there to do, to represent them, to discuss policy, to discuss legislation, to discuss how their money is going to be spent, and to arrive at the best decisions. Yes, even in the most formal of settings, someone may have a little off comment, a little funny comment to make. In court, we have little talk at the bar table all the time. But certainly when it reaches and degenerates to the type of comments we heard in that incident, you know, I was ashamed as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago to know that a member of parliament would be saying those things. He has apologized, and I take the apology as well. We all err, and at least he has apologized, unlike some persons who have also uttered horrible things in the parliament and have not apologized. So I take the apology, but I really want to call upon all parliamentarians. Watch it. Be careful what you say, because you are setting an example for future leaders. You are also conducting the people's business. And if anything, you should have respect for your boss, who is the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Have some respect and temper the language. We know things get heated. We know things can get a bit personal sometimes in an argument. That's almost always natural, especially if in heated debate. But you're a professional, and therefore you should act professionally and keep the conversation at a certain level. And I really thought that I needed to express that. And I saw that a lot of people agreed. Some people felt I should have targeted one person or two persons, but I think it's a wider problem. That incident is really a manifestation of, it's been festering. And I think, yes, that was one of the worst incidents, but we've heard comparable things. It just didn't blow up as much, right? So I really call upon parliamentarians. Let's bring the debate back to policy, to strategy, to, proper debate, so to speak. Yeah.
And well, of course, you mentioned being a professional. You have had a number of cases in the public domain, and I've seen it throughout the lengths and breadths of the media, several newspapers, on the news. Let's start with the Republic Bank case, and maybe you can probably explain in detail, because Marsha's actually speaking about how well you explain things
down,
break things
so
down. The legal jargon can get a bit difficult for one to read or understand, and so I'll give you the floor to explain to us what that really is.
For me, it was a very interesting case. What occurred was you had citizens who went to Republic Bank, as many citizens do, to access their safety deposit box service. Essentially, the bank keeps a safety deposit box. You can go and deposit jewelry, you can deposit other valuables, and you expect from what the bank advertises, it's a quote-unquote safety deposit box. Whatever you store there should be safe. And then we all have the perception that banks are well secured. They have security systems, etc. And these boxes are held out to be to keep your valuables. That's how it's advertised. Many of the persons who would have deposited things there deposited not only run-of-the-mill jewelry, watches, chains. They deposited part of their ancestral history. Some things, there's something called a Mangal Sutra, which in Hinduism is one of the first gifts that a husband gives to the wife. There are other ancient things where, East Indian population, they make the gold into coins and they keep it, or the biras, because that was the way you kept wealth. You didn't have a wallet to keep money or things, so you made gold and you kept it on you. These things were passed on to generation, and it ended up in a safety deposit box. People broke into the bank, stole the things, and then the question arose, well, is the bank liable for that? They advertised it as being a secure facility. It's been broken into. Should the bank be held liable? The contract had a very, peculiar clause. It said, well, the bank will not be liable as long as they exercise due diligence. And what occurred in the evidence, and it's in the judgment, is that the bank brought forward a lot of evidence to talk about their security systems, etc. And under cross-examination and during the course of the trial, it came out, certain things came out. For instance, that the cameras were not being monitored at the time. One camera was actually covered by one of the assailants, and the persons were in the bank for hours drilling, they broke open, as in they used heavy machinery, broke down a wall, entered through the wall.
This is money heist.
Yep, as I'm saying. And then the bank said, well, they had vibration sensors, they had motion sensors, and they also had cameras live monitoring. And so the bank said they had all the security system, but then the question, well, did it work? So people were able to break through a wall, break through a second wall, get into the vault, climb over the vaults, get into it, and then saw open these boxes, and they were there for hours in the bank. Right? So this is what happened. And the bank, when we wrote the pre-action, respectfully, the bank said, well, we deny liability. And I thought that it should not. Maybe they should have said, look, let's talk about this and see if we could come to some settlement. They denied liability. So we had to sue. I always tell people, as a lawyer, you should try and settle matters. Trial and going the full distance is a harrowing experience for litigants. It's not a very easy thing to get up in a box or go into a box and be cross-examined or be part of a trial. It's nerve-wracking, etc. So if you have the option to take a reasonable settlement, even though you might take a hit, you should think about settlement generally, right? But unfortunately, we had to do it. And, one of the things I love is doing trials. People may not like it, but I love it. I love to cross-examine. I love to be in a trial and be on my legs. So we did the trial and the judge agreed with us. What is important, I think, that comes out of the case is it creates a duty of care in law for banks. When banks tell you that they're going to secure your items, they now could be held to a certain standard. There's no precedent for this case in Trinidad. There was a previous case, but it got dismissed very early on. But in the Caribbean, in Trinidad, in even the Commonwealth, if you had one or two cases which dealt with an issue like this, it was a lot. So it was a little precedent setting. I think it's a good judgment for people who go to these institutions because you're vulnerable. When you go to a bank, you think it's secure. Clearly it wasn't. And it was some interesting, I generally practice public law and constitutional law. This was actually contract law because we had to apply contractual standards, etc. But it was very, very interesting. I think it does a lot for the law in terms of holding banks and institutions like banks accountable to people who put their trust and repose their trust and confidence in these institutions, which are licensed and advertise these services. So I think it's a good case, and we'll see where it goes. I think the bank is going to appeal. I'm happy to argue the matter all the way to the Privy Council. I think it'll be a very interesting one. Either way, I think it's a good statement or precedent to let banks and big institutions know that people can hold you accountable when you advertise yourself to provide these types of financial services to them. So you have a duty to people and you can't just disregard them. Yeah.
See why we had to stay quiet? Because
Yeah.
I'm going to clip it. I'm going to clip it.
Yeah.
While he was talking, I was trying to figure out what would the title be? What's a good catch?
That should be
versus banks.
So tell us about very, very interesting. That sounds very money heist-ish, by the way.
It was. I mean,
well, I don't know. I now have to go back and look at Money Heist to see if it is that they take 5 hours. I feel like this is more like some kind of comedy.
Well, interestingly, when I was doing the research,
these bank robbers didn't plan very well.
Yeah.
Unless they knew.
Yeah.
That's part of their research. So they'll know it will take 30 minutes. They know it will take an hour. We just finished watching Prison Break. I watched it back when it came out. So we sat and we watched it again. And you had to plan. You literally have to plan that he will take a smoke. So you have 30 seconds before he turns away and whatever. These people would have done their homework and come back and say easy pickings.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, when I was doing the research.
How was he saying?
Yeah, they were there for hours. And when I was doing the research, in America, you had a lot of bank robberies in the 60s and 70s. And what they actually did in America was pass a law called the Bank Protection Act. And what that meant was that banks had to implement Bank Safety Act. They had to implement a minimum standard of security in their banks. They could no longer be a walk-in and you deposit with one man with a gun. You had to implement a minimum standard of security in all banks because the US government recognized that you had a bank robbery problem, and you also had a problem where banks were saving money or pinching pennies on security while making multi-millions of dollars. Banks in Trinidad declare profits in the billions. So why not have a camera? I don't want to say, but my phone, I can monitor my house with your camera, right?
Yeah.
And I don't make billions of dollars. So why can't the banks have a system where the cameras monitor what's going on in the bank and somebody's looking at it? So if you see somebody in the bank, or if you see somebody cover a camera.
You cover a camera.
Yeah. And interestingly, this bank was not exactly opposite, but very close to a police station. Like you could see the police station. So had someone been alerted, the police would have been across there in 3 minutes, right? And maybe saved it. So I think that's an important aspect, and I think it's a good case. It increases the prospect of liability for institutions like banks, and I think that's always a good thing. There has to be a balance. You can't hold a bank liable for everything that happens, certainly not. But I think it's a good thing. I think there's a little redressing of an imbalance of power, to put it like that.
So that would have been one of, and within a matter of week, Marsha, by the way, within a matter of a week, a couple days. So this was one verdict that would have gone in attorney's Taklalsingh's favor. But we also saw that the OPR ordered NIPDEC to shut down $1 million bridge. And I think that was a case that is very pivotal and will be etched in our minds for a very long time. So, Kyle, we want to give you the opportunity to explain to us, because a number of persons are still having some difficulty understanding the committee and what really took place there. So maybe you can explain to us what happened in that
so
case.
Give us all the context and stuff, because I know that this kind of sets up the procurement office. It puts them on right standing from the very get-go.
Yeah. So all right. So let's take it from the start. We now have in Trinidad and Tobago a Procurement Act. The Procurement Act does several things. It sets out certain principles by which procurement in Trinidad and Tobago must be done. So there are principles you have to adhere to as long as you're a government authority, public body, and you're procuring services, goods and services. The core principles are transparency, accountability, value for money, and I argued good administration and proportionality, which was accepted, right? So you have these principles. You put out a tender, you have to abide by those principles generally. And there are many regulations of things you can do. The Procurement Act also set up a tribunal to assess if people want to challenge decisions of procuring entities or public authorities that ask for services. And it also set up an appeal board and other things. If you are displeased as a contractor or someone who bid for a job, you, Marsha, have a small company. You see, UDCOT put out a tender and you want to bid for it. You put in your bid. You see one of the big boys get it, but you think your bid was low. There's no good reason why you shouldn't have got it. You can then file something called challenge proceedings in the procurement with the procurement authority. They will set up a tribunal and they will hear your complaint. This particular case, NIPDEC put out a tender for a bridge. Many contractors put in their bids. My client was Calco. There were several other big contractors. Several of the big contractors were disqualified initially because NIPDEC said that they did not meet the technical specifications for a bridge. I mean, my argument is Calco has built many bridges. Junior Sami was disqualified, interestingly. Another big contractor, Lakshmi Singh, was disqualified. So several of them were disqualified, which we all found very strange. Well, these are people who have the technical expertise. They've executed this many times. Why were they disqualified? So we put in a challenge proceedings. What emerged in the case, and the reasons will be out shortly, what emerged in the case is that the NIPDEC, their tender committee that was assessing the tenders, had their own list of sub-criteria that they were judging you on. So essentially, they had a mark sheet and they had parameters and they had the marks that they would ascribe to these parameters. But the problem is none of the contractors knew this. None of the contractors, in putting in this huge tender, explaining how I will go about doing this bridge, knew what was the criteria upon which they're being judged and knew how much points they would be allotted for their specifications in moving TNTEC poles, in specifications in ensuring the bridge, in drilling, and this or that. And the law that comes out of Europe and all of the now advanced countries who have had a lot of procurement experience now, especially with challenges and tribunals, essentially say that it is a core tenet of transparency in procurement proceedings that a contractor or somebody who is tendering knows the criteria, knows the sub-criteria upon which you'll be judged. And I mean, when you think about it, when you go to write an exam, Chris, you have written many more exams, I think, than most people. You have to know the syllabus. You have to know what is the syllabus. And you're even told in your syllabus how much marks you're going to get for certain things. And it was the same thing. So what you had in this case was contractors bidding in the dark. They didn't know what they were being assessed on. And therefore they had a right to challenge. So this is not, I mean, my view is this was a highly technical case, but it was important because it emphasizes that procuring entities really have to be transparent about what they are doing and transparent about the criteria upon which you are judging. And the reason is this: if you have hidden criteria, you can manipulate the bid, because you could say, well, I am scoring A, B, C, D, and I gave X contractor all the points and Y contractor no points because I have my own criteria here that X contractor happened to meet, but Y contractor did not. That's why transparency is important. We must all be put on an even keel, even playing field, be allowed to bid and be allowed to win a contract or lose a contract fairly. The procurement board accepted, or the tribunal accepted our arguments. The matter is actually so transparent, the entire proceedings, which I did not know until I think I was actually doing the matter, is fully broadcasted on YouTube.
Yeah, I looked at it.
You got the very beginning, all the arguments, the cross-examination, everything. So it's all there if anybody wants to see it and see what were the things that were discussed and the principles and what were the comments of the tribunal, and the decision should be out very shortly. I mean, one of the things that I think went against NIPDEC is that they had created an evaluation report of the tender, but did not disclose it in the proceedings. So imagine you assess bids, you have a report, but you don't give it to the tribunal for the tribunal to see whether or not you assess bids correctly. That can't be right. So I think, and you know, I'm not saying that there was any nefarious intent by anybody in NIPDEC. It might be, and I think it's a culture shift now. We've been so accustomed in doing things a certain way in tendering and assessing tenders. It's a whole culture shift towards transparency and openness, that people aren't accustomed disclosing everything, giving all the information, being helpful, ensuring everybody is fair. I mean, before it was just let all the contractors fight up and whoever win, too bad, right? And so I think that that was a good decision. It was one of the first. There were some other decisions which are very good. On the procurement, the OPR website, you can get all of the decisions. There was an excellent decision in a case with Agostini, a bright young lawyer, Shari Fitzpatrick. She argued that one. I actually looked at that one because it was just before mine to kind of get the feel as to how to argue before the OPR. So that was helpful for me. So I think what has to happen now is people must look at the OPR, understand the duties of transparency, and familiarize yourself with some of the judgments coming out of the OPR and act accordingly. And anything that leads to a fairer, transparent procurement process, it's going to save taxpayers' dollars. It is going to assist and it's going to strengthen our democracy. I mean, this case with the bridge, for instance, my client put in a bid of around 13 million for the bridge. The winning contractor put in a bid for about 15 to 16 million. But had my contractor won, the taxpayer would have saved about $2 million, which could be used for many other things. And that's why it's important, right? Yeah.
Well, Kiel, first of all, we want to congratulate you on these two I think, very, very interesting, and they're huge cases.
Yeah.
You would have been a part of a team within the United National Congress recently. You would have contested the internal elections, etc.
Yes.
And of course, coming out of it, we have noticed that you have continued this theme of wanting to create a stronger UNC. You are wanting to create a stronger Trinidad and Tobago. You're doing a lot of work professionally. In terms of the politics, how do we get you in Parliament? Are you interested in being a member of Parliament? Is that something you're interested in?
I still have my nomination in. I have made no secret. I have put in my nomination to potentially serve as an MP for Couva North with the United National Congress. I have not withdrawn that. I am still very interested in being a member of Parliament. I'm still very interested. I think I have something to contribute towards making legislation for our country and towards governance. I think I have something to contribute. And therefore, yes, I hope I am considered favorably. Yes, I did go up with a team for internal elections. That is now over. So I am back to my practice, back to being a lawyer for now, and still involved in the politics and making my comments politically. And I suppose wherever the party decides to have me serve, I will act accordingly.
You have been quite effective, though, as an individual. Not holding a seat, not being a senator, not being a councillor. You have been very extremely effective. What you think, Marsha? What you think? What is the reason for that with Kiel? He's a very specific case, a very specific case. He has been quite effective in his advocacy.
Well, I interviewed him a while ago about this getting into Parliament thing. So, I know you're saying he's very effective, but he's actually saying that he wants to be more effective. That's why he wants to get into Parliament, because he's saying that even as a lawyer, yes, there are some things that he can do, but there's a limit that, so he wants to go into Parliament where the policies determine what he can fight as a lawyer, if I got that correct from our first interview. Because the courts the courts can only take our laws, right?
Yeah.
And those are created in Parliament. So I know that that's why he wants to get into Parliament, so that he can actually be more effective.
Yeah, I mean, a perfect example of that was the recent Revenue Authority case. I have a lot of conceptual problems with the Revenue Authority, the way it's set up, the way government is trying to control certain things in it. I think tax collection should be entirely by an independent body. I think because of the enforcement powers, they're akin to police, and therefore the government and the state should have very little say in how the tax authority is run. Currently, you have BIR, which is run solely by public servants. That is going to be whittled down with the new Revenue Authority. And, legislative changes have been made. A challenge was filed, and the Privy Council said, well, we understand your concerns, but this has been passed by the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. And having it passed by the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago means that this is the democratic will of the people. It's not enough of a contravention, or it's not really a contravention of constitutional rights for us to intervene. It's a matter of policy. And of course, where sets the policy? It's the Parliament. Yeah. So if I was in Parliament, I would review that. I would remove the minister entirely from having anything to do with the Revenue Authority. I'd put it back under the Public Service Commission. I would continue to have, if you needed workers on contract, or you needed to increase the armory of persons to enhance tax collection and assessment, so be it. But why does government need to get involved in that? I don't understand why the executive has to get involved in it. In fact, the more things that government are involved in, the worse it tends to run. That's why there's a trend towards privatization of many things, many services in developed states, postal services, etc., even health. So, that's a perfect example. I was raising it to say that that's an example of why I think you have to get into Parliament if you want to make meaningful change. You do it with the law, and there are excellent cases that have won, vindicating rights, pushing the boundaries of the law, but eventually you hit a mistake. So you have to get into the policy making seat in order to effect more comprehensive change.
What would have been your initial reaction to the fiscal package, the budget for 2025? And this would have been, I believe, the 10th budget presentation by this Minister of Finance.
Boring. Boring in the sense that there's nothing innovative. There's nothing imaginative. Same old tax and spend. There's nothing. What we require, and I've said it, you need to reimagine the economy. Yes, we're a gas-based economy, but we can't continue like that. And it's almost now a bit of, a trope or just a saying, you diversify, but what are you doing? Like, make it the plank. If you say financial services, make it the plank of your budget that this is why I'm channeling my resources, time and effort to create a financial services sector that could rival the world. Why do we need to think Caribbean or even regional? Think world. What are we going to beat the world at? Where is the Brian Lara of economic policy? Where is the Atto Bolden of economic policy? Where is the Dwight York of economic policy? Where are we going to beat the world and be the most competitive in the world so that our economy is going to shine? This kind of Lilliputian thinking that we have, we're trapped on an island, right? Where we tie down and we can't do anything. That has to stop. We can be world beaters. And his entire theme of the budget was, we are subject to world forces and world prices. And yes, we know. So what are you going to? We didn't elect you to tell us the obvious. We elected you to solve a problem. The problem is our economy is contracting. The problem is people are finding it harder to afford basic goods and services. The problem is we can't get forex. The problem is that the middle class are now going into the into poverty. The poverty persons in poverty are finding it almost difficult to exist. So what are you doing to solve the problem? Don't come and tell me, well, the world has a transportation problem and a shipping problem. I could read Economist today and tell you everything there. But what are you going to do to fix it? And I have not seen that. I've just heard a report. I heard some statistics. I heard a few things, but no actual policy. I mean, one of the big problems, and I think Rushton mentioned it in his winding up or in his contribution, is the problems we have at the port. We are having serious problems right now at the port. People, importers aren't getting goods. People who need raw materials to manufacture aren't getting goods because there's like a slowdown on the port. There was a talk sometime about privatizing the port. We don't know what has happened with that. Is that still on? What are you going to do? Because that is a key part of your economy, being able to move goods in and out of your country. Another thing is the ease of doing business. Chris, I challenge you, go tomorrow and set up a bank account in one day. Go tomorrow and set up a company in one day. You have an idea, you are innovative, go and get financing and go and set up the mechanism by which
would you be the finance? I would, okay, but would you be the finance there?
I will finance you $100. But what I want you to do is I have to transfer it into your new business account. Okay. If you get it done within 24 hours, I will transfer the money into your new business account.
I don't know that he could get it done within 24 days.
That's the point. What is the incentive for me? Let's say I'm a middle class. I consider myself a young professional. I have some disposable income. Let's say I want to set up a business, employ more people. I have an innovative idea and I want to get going. It's going to take me more than maybe 2 months to set up a company to trade under. I have endless red tape with that company with the amount of things I have to do, cross-system, beneficial owner, etc., etc. Then, God forbid, I need a bank account because you need a bank account to do anything, right? Mm-hmm. That takes another. So by the time, I think you will probably get running by the time you get your licenses to do whatever you want. You're talking about half a year. And by that time, the market is gone. What they say, first the market gets gold. So if you're not first to market with your idea, where are you going? And that's the problem that people are facing. You can't set up, you can't monetize ideas of small business, SMEs, what you call SMEs, or innovators. the other problem I've spoken about is the banks. Their lending policy is totally off. They don't have a lending policy. They lend you money for carnival costume, they lend you money for credit card, but you go and get a business loan, they don't want to hear you. They just don't. And it's because they don't understand their role as an intermediary. The role of an intermediary of a bank is to collect people's money and lend it to other people who have innovative ideas. That's the way modern economies take off.
So Kyle, I know that how much more time we have with him, Marsha?
10 minutes.
10
And you're
minutes.
making him talk about banks, and I've had him talk about bank already. I had Kyle talk about budget already, by the way.
I'm beating up on bank now.
So did you think
we still have time to talk? We were supposed to be talking about Rowley, his birthday, the political landscape, and Kyle said he wanted to talk about the political landscape, huh? I'm just saying.
I want to, so that's what my next question is.
10 minutes. Pick
that's
it.
what
Okay. Because
I can stay
again,
5 minutes because I am supposed to cook dinner this afternoon for the wife. And she will be home very soon. So I can stay 5 minutes.
Was you going to be a microwave or something?
Well, pasta.
Pasta.
So 10 years we have had the People's National Movement in government. 10 years we have had the Prime Minister serve as Prime Minister. 10 years we have had Minister of Finance served as the Minister of Finance. A number of things happened within that 10-year period. Well, the PNM consecutively and consistently stayed in office. They would have consecutively and consistently won elections, not just general, but also they would have picked up some sort of inroads. For example, the Indian Walk Lengua seat in a recent local government election. Of course, we are seeing more and more fracturing within the main opposition party, that is the UNC, that's the party you belong to. What is your outlook right now on the political landscape, and how do you see where we are right now impacting the general election next year?
This might be a controversial statement, but I don't think there's a fracturing in the UNC. I think we had an internal election. I think it was a very competitive internal election. I mean, by the way in which parties contested their seats. And so be it. I think both sides, and I say sides meaning sides during the internal election, but I think everybody now has to focus to make the UNC stronger. I still have my concerns that I articulated during the internal campaign. They didn't disappear because I lost an election. I am very concerned about the state of the UNC. I still think there are weaknesses. I still think there are some persons in the UNC ought not to be in certain positions. I put it as respectfully as that. That's my view. And I think the UNC has a lot to do to unseat the PNM whenever the election is called. Whether or not we can do so, I think once there's a will, there's a way. And I think with enlightened leadership, and I think with good decisions, good choices, and a will to win, and a will to unite, it can happen. But unite does not mean everybody accept the status quo and what is wrong and come together despite your beliefs and principles. That could never be unity. That is something else. That is cult. Yes, that is cult. That is not unity. Unity means we respect each other's views and we find a common ground and there's give and take. That is unity. Right? So until really takes place, I think the UNC has a difficult job in unseating the PNM. I do not think it's good strategy. Sorry, there's a mic passing. I do not think it is good strategy at all to simply say the PNM is a horrible government and we will win an election. That's not going to work. Unfortunately, in our elections, the PNM seem to be the default choice. Good, bad, they always maintain a certain level. You have to beat the PNM to win an election. You can't let the PNM lose an election. You have to beat them. And to beat them, we have to be better. And that's my simple view. I await, because of course I'm not a part of NATEX. NATEX is the policy-making arm of the UNC. So we await the plans, the policies, the strategies of NATEX to be filtered down as a member, and I will look at it and I will, follow where I can. I will express my view where I think it needs expressing. But at this stage, we just have to hope for the best, right?
Do you think the internal rumblings within the PNM right now is going to make it an easier road for the UNC to victory come next year?
I don't think so, because the PNM, there may very well be internal rumblings. I mean, I've just heard rumors, but there may be internal rumblings. But they're going to get their act together. They're going to get they're going to get their act together come to an election. There was no more bitter fight in politics than the fight between Patrick Manning and Dr. Keith Rowley. I don't think I've ever seen a more bitter fight than that. Even between Mr. Maharaj and Mr. Pandey and that section in the early 2000s. Mr. Manning and Mr. Rowley went at it. So much so that in the parliament, they debated each other, right? And when the election rolled around, Dr. Rowley's seat was really never in question, because the party rallied around him. They valued his dissent, and Mr. Manning was not able to remove him, whether or not he wanted to remove him. I mean, I don't know the internal politics, but either way, regardless of their disagreement, they campaigned together. There was obviously some accommodations, and they went into an election. Now, they lost, but the point is they got together for the election. And as Dr. Rowley said during that campaign, I always remember, he said that when you go into battle in the ship, you're going to battle. And when we come back to shore, there'll be time for court-martial. And then so be it. And that's their policy. But nowhere in the PNM is that, because you are a dissenter, you're thrown out. It's clearly not. I mean, we've known about fallouts, but you don't get thrown out. So I don't understand where the talk in the UNC comes up about getting rid of dissenters and that kind of thing. It's unfortunate.
Oh no, I don't. I actually hold a different view. I think, and we just had MP Paray on, by the way, before you.
Right.
And so we would have witnessed the seats being shifted in Parliament. And I think this internal election would have solidified a number of the United Patriots candidates within the organization of the UNC.
Right.
We would have seen the type of political flair that we have not seen and that has been absent from the political landscape for quite some time. That level of passion, advocacy, the talent, it was very much present, especially on the Patriots team. There was presence also on the star team, but to see persons who you are not a member of Parliament and you held your own. I think you were one of the, no pun intended, one of the stars on the Patriots team, right? Yeah, okay, right?
Yeah.
But my question to you is now, where's Tobago in this equation? Come general elections. I mean, you have the TPP in Tobago, you have the People's National Movement in Tobago. We are uncertain or unsure of what's the UN. I know the UNC's position, what it once was. I don't know if it still stands. How do you see Tobago as an indicator or a big factor in the next general election or the lead up to the election?
Well, they may very well hold the balance, hold the key to the balance of power. We're what, 1921 right now in the parliament? Yeah, no, right. Yeah, no, yes, 1922, right?
22, sorry.
Yes, yeah. Right. So 2 seats is really going to determine a lot, right? 2 seats are going to determine a lot, and the Tobago experience right now is that after the Tobago House of Assembly election, the PNM was swept out. So it's quite plausible politically that Mr. Farley's party is going to win if he decides that he's going to contest the general election. It maybe he will not. Might very well be that he's going to remain a Tobago party and contest the House of Assembly elections alone. If I were him, I would definitely want to look at the landscape as it comes closer to the general elections to consider it, because general elections and getting a say in the, the policy making aspect of Trinidad and Tobago will be important for Tobagonians, because the THA now is really just an implementation arm under the constitution of government policy. So the THA doesn't get to decide whether Tobago gets a new airport. The THA can get to decide where it might go or decide how it's built, but ultimately the policy resides with cabinet. So Mr. Farley needs to get in to cabinet some way, either through an alliance or on his own, to be able to set policy that can make real changes to the lives of people who live in Tobago. I mean, I say we are one nation, one unitary state, but at the end of the day, I understand he has an interest in developing Tobago, and he can really do so through policy, making of policy, as opposed to merely implementing policy. Yeah.
Guys, it's 6 p.m. Thank you very much. Kyle.
All right. Take care, guys.
Dinner.
Yes. Bye-bye.
See you guys next week.
Thank you so much, Marsha and company, Kyle and Chris.
Yes.
It's an informative program. That's it for today's edition of Hard Talk with Marsha Walker.